Because of the haemophilia, my right elbow joint is damaged and my right arm doesn't straighten. That's it. When I was diagnosed, which was 1972, my parents were told that life expectancy was 21 if we were lucky. It was a case of every time I had a nosebleed, which I suffered badly from, so nearly bled to death on many occasions. Growing up, when you're constantly banging yourselves, so you would get internal bleeding. So the same as everybody else. It's not that you walk around constantly being cut and bleeding. It's if you bang yourself and you get a bruise is internal bleeding. But with haemophiliacs, that bleeding doesn't stop, so the bruises just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the case of, say you bang your knee, the blood builds up inside the joint and it actually pushes the joint apart. So, I mean, you can imagine the agony of it, it's literally, you know, your joints being destroyed. So over time, every time you have a bleed and it into that joint, it keeps doing this, and it then causes arthritis and the bones and the joint to actually then disintegrate. So as time progresses, the joint becomes weakened. As it becomes weakened, it makes it more vulnerable, which means it bleeds more. So then it's a vicious cycle. So it is you gradually deteriorate as life goes on. I was told that I was positive for hepatitis C, and I was told that when I got the HIV, I got the hepatitis C at the same time. If you got one, you got the other. But don't worry, because you'll long be dead with AIDS before the hep C would kick in. As I laid in a hospital bed connected to machines, literally thinking, you know, I don't know when I'm going to die, my bosses came in and fired me. Again, because of my sickness record. So, I mean, it couldn't have been any more cruel. They might have just switched the machine off. That was in 2003, but at that same time, my haemophilia friends had been in contact with me, and I was given evidence to show that this wasn't a big accident like we'd been led to believe. They knew about it. They knew the treatment was contaminated. There was warnings about the treatment long before I was born. So I became a campaigner, and basically since 2003 to present day, I've been fighting the British government for justice.
Rory Stewart!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the most disturbing scandals has been the infection of thousands of people across the nation with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated blood. Today, Lord Penrose publishes a report which follows nearly 25 years of campaigning by members on both sides of this House to address this scandal. Could the Prime Minister, as the last act of his government, ensure a full apology, transparent publication, and above all, proper compensation for the families terribly affected by this scandal?
There'd been calls before for a public inquiry, but they'd always refused it. So we formed this group called Tainted Blood, and the campaign for justice began.
I know that many members on all sides of this House have raised the question of infected blood. I've spoken about how constituents have been to my surgeries. While it will be for the next government to take account of these findings, it is right that we use this moment to recognise the pain and the suffering experienced by people as a result of this tragedy.
We've been close a couple of times, and then they've taken it away. They just play games. They've had us going round and round in circles.
It is difficult to imagine the feelings of unfairness that people must feel at being infected with something like hepatitis C or HIV as a result of a totally unrelated treatment within the NHS. And to each and every one of those people, I would like to say sorry on behalf of the government for something that should not have happened.
Incredibly, last year, the British government announced a warts and all inquiry. And they did so under mounting pressure from various politicians, and also from a marvellous campaign run by British haemophiliacs and others into what is known as their worst medical disaster, tainted blood. Authorities in England and the media are calling it the worst peacetime disaster in British history.
8 months later, 60 people have already died since then, and we've only just now had the chair announced. They've just messed us around, and they keep putting consultations in that, what do we want? You know, we've had 30 years of telling them what we want. We know what happened. We don't need to be told what happened. It's how it was allowed to happen, why it continued to happen, and then also the important thing is how we, the victims and families, have been treated since this scandal hit the news. We've got little boys that died of 7 years old with cirrhosis of the liver, and the doctors blamed alcohol.